don't annoy Xi Jinping anymore. Tell everything Xi Jinping tell you to do it. Like withdraw your stupid voice. If my memory is clear, it will be my first time to learn that it's a US president say that he is fully understand the importance of these Taiwan questions to China. Japanese prime minister use her voice and use her actions to prove it's a time to re-empower these articles so that we can have a very powerful international law institutions to deter and fighting against any potential aggressor, any potential threat to regional orders.
The phone call between Xi and Trump. I'd like to compare notes very briefly, statements from both sides. Now, leading the headlines are, of course, the agreement that Trump is going to visit China in April. And now that is the same on both sides. And also positive sentiment is also the same on both sides releases. But the White House stressed that the call focused on trade, but Chinese state media emphasized Trump's acknowledgement of China's important contribution towards the world's fight against fascism and a recognition that Taiwan is of great importance to China. And another anecdote, Western media stresses that in an unusual, and I quote, they say, in an unusual move, it is President Xi who initiated the call to President Trump. Let's hear your take on it, Professor Shen.
Say that the information comes from the FMPRC that in the press conference, they confirmed it's President Trump, not President Xi Jinping, that initiated the call. The first, morning make this announcement in this afternoon's press conference of FMPRC. But I noted that in the Chinese version of this statement, there's a two Chinese term that's neglected from the statement. As usual, if Trump make the call, we will say that President Xi Jinping 应邀 as invited to accept.
Was invited,
invited. But this time, this 应约 has been
removed. They didn't mention.
So I think that maybe Trump make the call, but both sides has those intention to call with each other. I have something to say to you, and you have something to say to me, and we can dialogue. It's not politically correct, but just some sounds like G2 models. These two great powers, they sit down and dialogue with each other how to deal with those things, which is very sensitive, which is very important to stabilize the bilateral relationships and then stabilize the regional and the world situations in a more general ways, the first. And the second, it's the second time that when the release of the readout between Xi Jinping and President Trump from the FMPRC, they said, 中美相互成就，共同繁荣. The US and China make each other's success or contribution to each other's success and then bring to a common prosperity. It's the first. It's the first time in the Chinese statement to say that United States and China can contribute to each other's success. So this is very interesting things because today, from China's side, frankly speaking, when talking about the success of China, that which United States can make contribution to, the number one thing is Taiwan issues, is the Taiwan questions. While at the same time, what United States need from China's side and help or contribution to the success of the United States, or in their terms, MAGA, is economy, the soybeans, import and export trade deficit, trade balance, and so on. So if you read from that framework, you will find that's very interesting. From the Chinese side, we're focusing on Taiwan issues.
Yes.
From the United States, they're focusing on these trade issues. Just like that, these two guys, they dialogue with each other, and then they got everything they need from the other side, and they express the part that they need, they take with the part that the deal among these two guys, and then both guys pick up the best part of the deals and express to the other countries. I think that's maybe a kind of the real face of great power diplomacy, because the diplomacy means compromise. Maybe the most important. If my memory is clear, it will be my first time to learn that it's a U.S. president say that he is fully understand the importance of these Taiwan questions to China.
Yes.
It should be the first time. You know that these things make a lot of sense. And we know that in quite a long times, if you go back to the Joe Biden's administrations or go back to even Obama or Junior Bush or even Clinton, that the United States has a quite uh, framed narrative structures when talking about the Taiwan issues. It's just like these things. From China's side, China say that, hey, you US guys need to insist this one China policy or one China principles. You should not support one China, one Taiwan, or two China, or that unidentified territory status of Taiwan and so on. And then United States says we will insist one China policies with the guide of U.S. Taiwan Act, 与台湾关系法, Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 joint communiques and the 6 reassurance provided by the Reagan administrations to Taiwan. They use this such kind of very long sentence to very precisely describe the United States strategic blur policies to Taiwan's issues. But this time, the Trump say that he said that first China make a great contribution to the victory of Second World War, and then he say that United States fully understand the importance of Taiwan to China.
Mm.
So that's providing another narrative. It's just like say that, okay, from China's side, President Xi Jinping say that Taiwan belong to China is part of the arrangement of the so-called post-Second World War international orders.
Mm.
And this order is jointly produced by the victories of the aligned camps of the Second World War, which means United States and China joined together fighting against fascism, fighting against Japanese militarisms, and then they build these post-Second World War international orders. And even the China say that it's a proper time again in today that United States and China stand shoulder by shoulders to fighting against or to help to safeguard these orders. And the United States say, yes.
We acknowledge it, yep.
Just acknowledges or say, yes, he did not say any de facto opposing voice on that new narrative. That's providing a huge space for imaginations. And such in that directions, you can imagine any potential constructive possible cooperation patterns between China and the United States to solve these Taiwan questions.
What must be happening in the imagination of Takaichi right now?
And so she just keeps silence. You know that in the Second World War, we have a joke to laugh at those stupid Japanese military generals, say that they put some small victories in a huge amount of waters 往水里掺战果, which means you show that at normal ways people say 往战果里掺水, which means you adding 1 or 2% waters into the real victory result. But he just on the opposite ways. It's a pure waters. It means they gain nothing. And then they put very little small, the fragmented piece of so-called victory and add it into those waters and say, okay, we make sense. We make huge victories. That is that traditions. That's a kind of cultures embedded in their DNAs for those peoples like today's Japanese prime ministers. But just such kind of guys, he can say nothing. He have nothing to prove her victory from the calling from United States. She can say nothing. When people ask what's the precise that U.S. President Trump talking to you about these Sino-Japanese relationships, the United States and the Japan military allies, to which extent the United States will back up your voice on these Taiwan issues or on these so-called U.S. and Japanese military cooperations, you can say no comments because it's diplomatic, classified issues. So no comment. That means first, nothing constructive. And the second, Trump made this call just a few hours after he finished the dialogue with President Xi Jinping. And there's a report from the Japanese side, the call just lasting for no more than 20 minutes. And according to Japan and the US relationships, it's just like the US side speak about 15 minutes and the Japanese have 5 minutes. And this 15 minutes and 5 minutes will be separated into two parts. One is the original voice and the second is the translation. So it means the Japanese prime minister had no more than 3 minutes to express her voice, just like hi, hi, and hi, no more than hi. And you can imagine how funny this scenario is, that Trump got a dialogue with his very good friend Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping tell him something, and just Trump finished the call, there's a 3 ship coming from United States to China, carried with soybeans, exporting from United States to China. So it's okay, just a very typical real estimate. Best sailors, Trump make the good deals. So I think he just providing some information like, my relationship with Xi Jinping is perfectly good. Please be smart enough to stand by. Or maybe it means you should be shut up. Keep your voice low or don't annoy Xi Jinping anymore. Tell everything Xi Jinping tell you to do it. Like withdraw your stupid voice. And you know, the most interesting part is if you read the U.S.-Japanese Security Compact, which means the treat about the U.S.-Japanese military cooperations, you will find that United Nations has been mentioned for 7 times in that joint agreement between Japan and the United States, also called the military cooperations. And especially on the Article 5 and Article 7, you will find it's very interesting. In this Article 5, not like Article 5 of NATO, it never mentioned the term, the use of force. He just said that the attack on one side will be recognized a kind of attack to the both parties of the treatment of the treaty, and they will take act according to their constitutional procedures, which means constitutional procedures. It means you can take a kind of political reaction, economic reaction, diplomatic reaction, or military reactions. It's just depends on your decide. And the second is the most interesting part. It say that when this situation happened, you need to report this situation to United Nations Security Council. And after UN Security Council makes kind of decision and take an actions, all those parties, your reactions toward this situation must be stopped. So this is not a kind of military treatment, just like people imagined that United States providing military protection to Japan. It's kind of very special patterns of relationship in the Cold War framework. Just like United States need a kind of assistance, a kind of help from the Japanese side, and then the Japanese side can got some freedom to act under that direction or condition. Without that direction or conditions, the Japanese so-called self-defense force, they are not allowed to take any so-called collective defense actions in that treaty. And also, the most important part is Article 7 of that treaty, which insists that any delegations in that treaty framework should not confront or challenge the duties and the delegations of each parties which they got in the framework of UN charters, which means the UN charters is kind of advanced law institutions to this US-Japan military treaty.
Yeah.
So the 敌国条款, the articles of the enemies, the article toward those Axis states will be extremely important. It means that if China acts according to these UN charters, and the United States have the freedom and the right or even kind of obligations, don't do anything to protect Japan. If Japan violate the duties or delegations under the framework of UN chapters. That's the most interesting part of the latest development of these things. You will find that Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi make a huge or horrible mistake with a very minor step. She just moved one step away forward, but his minor step just violates the whole arrangement that's set up as the result of Second World War. And it provided China and the world society a golden opportunity to reset these enemy state articles in the UN chapters. In quite a long times, people has a kind of very beautiful imaginations since the Second World War has already finished about longer than half a century, and maybe all these stupid mind or stupid actions has been removed from the state. It will be improper to treat these countries like an Axis member state as according to their horrible war criminal actions in the Second World War. But nowadays, Japanese Prime Minister use her voice and use her actions to prove, yes, these articles still have their values. It's a very, very correct decisions that they had not been removed from the UN charters. It's a time to trigger them. It's a time to re-empower these articles so that we can have a very powerful international law institutions to deter and fighting against any potential aggressor, any potential threat to regional orders, which is one of the most important part of those international orders after the Second World War. Just like she said, Japan is back. This Japanese empire wants to be back, and we need to be reminded it's a wake-up call, and we need to do our everything to stop the return of this Japanese military empire.